and welcome to the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals meeting for May 11th, 2021. We have a work session this evening, and we will start off with some administrative applications. The first we have this evening is Abate Marco at 21 Treasure Island Drive, East Hampton, tax map number 300-175-5-31. And this is to allow an existing 8.7 square foot generator to remain on a property containing dune land and beach vegetation. And Eleni is the planner assigned on this, and Eleni is going to walk us through this, if you would, please, Eleni.
I'm just going to share my screen. So this is the survey. This is a pretty small request. It's for about an 8.7 square foot generator. It's just right here where my cursor is. It's in, the reason it needs a natural resources special permit is because there's dune land throughout this parcel. That's pretty much it. The generator is currently existing, so it's looking to legalize this structure. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Lenny, I'm wondering, was there another location that would have been preferred by you? Had they approached this before it was installed?
There are no wetlands, so there's no real setbacks here. Pretty much anywhere that they put it, it would require an NRSP. It could, I guess it could be closer to the residents, but it's right next to the pool equipment, which was approved to be there. So they didn't really need to do any clearing for the most part for this, just a small bit. And this area is all vegetated back here.
Right. So for the most part, it's vegetated around it.
Yeah, so the line of vegetation, it kind of comes up around the pool here. It's all beach grass in this area.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, thanks, Eleni. This is in my Amagansett district. I'm okay with this. Board members, any other comments, questions?
I'm good with it.
With it as well.
Okay, then with regard to Abate Marco at 21 Treasure Island Drive in East Hampton, tax map number 300-175-5-31, I make a motion that this be handled administratively.
Second.
Concur.
I concur.
I'll concur as well.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to Adams at 28 Jackson Road, Montauk, tax map number 300-70-1-11.1. And this is to construct a 2,133 square foot residence with 250 square feet of decking, an IA sanitary system, clearing and fence within jurisdiction of freshwater wetlands. Excuse me. And Tyler is going to walk us through this. Good evening, Tyler.
Good evening, board. So again, just to go through it, this is a 2,100 and change square foot residence, 2 stories, has an attached garage. This is currently an unimproved parcel. I'll give you some aerial images just to give you an idea of the neighborhood. So this is Lincoln on the right-hand side here, or the east side. Large ponding wetland on Lincoln, which you're probably aware of. And then across the street are the wetlands, which are within the closest jurisdiction to this property. So it's currently unimproved, small vacant lot. I have a nice image here. The lot would be that we're looking at is down here, and you can see how close they are to these wetlands as well. So they're building a 2-story residence, essentially centralized on the lot in order to maximize setbacks for the sanitary system. The driveway is out of just this line here. This semicircle here is the 150-foot line. So that's your jurisdictional line. So, there's a lot of this, which is out of jurisdiction entirely. The garage is out of jurisdiction. The second story, a lot of it's out of jurisdiction. Sanitary meets setbacks, and the residence itself meets setbacks, 114 feet to the edge of the residence, almost 115. They're keeping all the vegetation that on the south side of the residence as much as they can. There's not a heck of a lot more that they could do on this one. There's a fence as well included in the project on the north and east side. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I think this is about as much as we'll see on this property. I can't imagine they'll be doing much else with it.
Thank you, Tyler.
What? Show me the line again, the 150 line.
Sure, it's the outer red line here.
The outer red line.
Zoom in on it a little bit.
And what's that say on the left? Proposed a roof deck Does that say roof deck?
Yeah, there's a deck on the central part of the roof there.
All right. I guess I'm okay with it.
Ed?
Ed?
I am as well. I'm okay with it, Mr. Chair.
I'm okay.
Same here.
Same here. If you'd like to make a motion, please, Terry.
Okay, so in the application for Adams at 28 Jackson Road in Montauk, tax map 70-1-11.1, I make a motion to allow this application to be processed administratively.
Second.
Concur?
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thank you, Terry. Thank you, Tyler.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move along to the next we have here is Samarth at 4 Captain Balfour Way in Montauk, tax map number 300-9-1-8.19. And this is to construct a 4,703 square foot residence, 3,250 square foot terrace, 750 square foot pool and sanitary system on a parcel of land within the town's jurisdiction of wetlands. And Michael is the planner, and Michael's going to walk us through this. Good evening, Michael.
Sure, board members, you can see my screen here. This is the aerial of the property currently. It's currently vacant. This is Captain Balfour off Wills Point as part of the Culloden Point subdivision. The application is for the initial construction of the residence and improvement of the lot. So as you can see here, here's the house. The closest point is I believe it's 111 or roughly 112 feet from the wetland to the north off the property. And then there's another wetland down here, and the closest point to that is 165. So most of the improvements that are proposed to be on the property are going to be out of jurisdiction to the wetland on the south side, and largely will be in jurisdiction of this area here. To the north. You can see I sketched on the jurisdictional boundary. So it's a portion of the pool, about half the residence, and a portion of the terrace.
Excuse me, what are you showing us? I'm not seeing any pointers on this. All I'm seeing is the static photo of the.
Yeah, it's just a survey at the moment.
I don't see the survey. It's a
Yeah,
GIS photo.
We have the aerial.
We have the aerial with the woodland, the vacant parcel, Michael.
There you go.
There we
That should
go.
be it now.
There we go.
Yeah, okay, that's different. Yeah.
All right. So this is the survey here, and we have the wetland to the north, as I was saying, and the wetland to the southwest over on this side. So it's just for the initial development of the property. In speaking to the applicant, they have agreed to an easement that runs pretty much along kind of where they propose to regrade on this side. So they're going to be revegetating. It's about 700 square feet. So it'll increase the buffer to this wetland from 65 feet to about 85 feet to this wetland. In this area, these properties that border it are nature preserves. So there's some pretty significant conservation measures that were already put in place as part of the Culloden Point subdivision. And the planning department feels this is a good candidate for administrative and review.
Can you talk more about what they're regrading? Because the topology there was incredibly steep. It was a beautiful property.
It is.
Yeah, beautiful area.
So most of the regrading is going to be on the backside of the residence here. They're proposing to retain some over here. There's going to be a garage down here that's going to be out of jurisdiction. The pool, the garage, and a portion of the sanitary will be out of jurisdiction for the board. But there is an amount of regrading for the project.
Terry or Ed, any comments?
Well, it's a beautiful property. It's huge. It's kind of a scary project, but I did talk to Michael about this today, and
Yeah.
he said that the Cologne Shores apparently have some pretty stringent environmental rules within that subdivision.
Mhm.
Yeah, the building envelopes that were approved as part of this subdivision were largely designed so that variances would not be needed. And, you know, if other approvals would be needed, it would just be, you know, to the level of an NRSP. And so you can see there's, you know, these approved building envelopes kind of throughout the lot. There's already an easement on the back side of the lot, as well as the easement on the north side.
Also, looks like there are 11 dry wells on the survey, so they're really paying
Correct.
attention to the drainage.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I visited the site as well today. It is a beautiful site, and it's a great parcel. It's heavily vegetated with a lot of mature growth. There's some hardwoods throughout. I had a couple of questions for Michael. I talked to him earlier.
Mhm.
Most of my questions were out of jurisdiction, so I was satisfied that for our purposes that the intentions here are being pretty well looked after. I think the increasing the easement to the north was satisfying because there is some vegetation there that you'd want to see protected, but Michael assured me that that's now going to be part of a scenic easement and that it would stay that way. So I don't have a problem with this going administratively.
Thank you, Ed. I reviewed it with Michael as well. I feel the same as do you. Board members, Tim and
Yeah.
I agree.
Mike?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. Let's see. Terry, do you want to make a motion or Ed? I'm not sure which one. If any of you took a lead on this in any way or?
No, not really, but okay,
Okay.
I'll do it. The matter, application for Samarth at 4 Captain Balfour Way, Montauk, tax map 300-009-01-8.19. Make a motion to allow this application to be processed administratively.
I'll second it.
Concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thanks, Terry. And thank you, Michael, for your work on this. And Michael is going to stick around with us. Council, I wonder, board members, should we I don't know if Eleni, there's one, jump down the agenda and maybe we don't have to keep Eleni here much longer. I don't know.
Actually, has to stick around for 216.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering about. Should we just jump and do that now or should we just stick with the agenda?
No, that's okay.
It's fine. You
Yeah.
probably, I figured you were probably, okay, thanks, Eleni.
Thank you for thinking of that, but I thank you. I'm just going to say anyway, so.
Good. I know you're fascinated with this project. Seriously, I know you are interested in it. Seriously, I'm not kidding there. But thank you, Eleni. Okay, we'll move along then. Next on the agenda, we have post-hearing decisions. And board members, as you know, we have the post-hearing decisions for the 4 applicants at Shore Road. And council, can I read these in? We're doing decisions. Can we handle, council, maybe you can comment on this evening, remind the public what we're doing, what our charge is, and also as far as merging these kind of our discussions together. Would you mind, Nancy Lynn?
Not a problem. We have 4 properties, and there are 4 properties plus the adjoining trustee land that is located between the shore side of these properties and the water body, so that these 4 properties and the adjoining trustee land is what is the subject for these. Since their applications are very similar, we will be voting on them separately once we have the determinations written, but as you know, we'll do that next meeting, not this meeting. So at this time, it's just a discussion, and wherever they are similarly situated, the board can feel free to talk about them as one, and saying that find that these 4 properties that such and such applies to all of them. They are all up for an NRSP, so there are no separate variances or separate items on the property that have to be specifically called out. As you recall, this is for a structure that will be partially on these properties and partially on trustee property. And so if there are any differences or there are any additional conditions for one property that is not going to be consistent with the other three, or if there's two, or maybe the end properties or whatever, so long as you just make that distinction in your discussion, we can talk about them all four at the same time. So anytime you do have any differences, please identify which property it is if you have some differences. And if not, feel free to just talk of them in as one unit.
Okay, thank you for that, Nancy Lynn. Before we move along, I'll comment to the public and board members. It's interesting and I want to thank Brian Frank, Senior Environmental Analyst, for his work on this. And Michael is sitting in, pinch hitting for him this evening. But we were discussing at our planning meeting how, as board members, the property lines go down to the trustees line, the mean high water or the low water, depending on the case. And it's quite amazing looking at the image of the screen of where that line used to be when this property was subdivided and created. So, Council, we have the EAFs. I guess we should really handle the EAF before our discussion. Does that make sense, Council?
Yeah, I think it would be helpful if, at least for the purposes of creating a record, if you could read in all of the applicant name, address, and tax map number, and then we can discuss not only on whether or not to, I think the first thing to discuss is whether or not, discussing whether or not to approve an RSP for each of these properties. Mm-hmm. And then if the board finds that they're looking to approve these, then do the secra on one or all. I mean, if it's all of them, then they all need a secra. Anyone that is not going to be permitted, you do not need to do the secra on. And once the secra is done, and if it's going to be approved, we also need a coastal consistency finding.
Okay, that it's in keeping with the LWRP. Is that, yes, Council, as you said earlier? Yes.
So
okay.
We just need to make sure that the record is clear that when you're talking about all or you're talking about one, if you are
great. Thank you, Nancy Lynn. So I'm going to go ahead and just read in our applicants here. Then I thought I'd just start with the first. We can do our discussion, as Nancy Lynn says, and then we'll go back to the EAFs and read one in. I can read in some of the EAF, and we'll just walk through it, board members. So first of all, the four applicants. The first we have is Lloyd Douglas at 611 Shore Road, Narragansett, tax map number 300-106-2-35.3. Next, we have Chris Anderson at 619 Shore Road, Narragansett, tax map number 300-106-2-39.2. Next, we have Demelis Marin at 621 Shore Road, Narragansett, tax map number 300-106-2-39.3. Next, we have 623 Shore Road LLC at 623 Shore Road, Narragansett, tax map number 300-106-2-39.4. This is in my district of Amagansett, so I will start us off here, and we have Michael Delalio to help us pull up anything, board members, you may want to see on your screen while you're discussing it. As you know, in our files and in the hearings, we had a very thorough PowerPoint presentation. We've had much discussion on these applications. We've had discussion and back and forth with the trustees. I mean, it went to the trustees as well. As Nancy Lynn noted, this does include the trustee land below or the mean high water here of each one of these properties. In general, I will just to introduce and those who are watching, I will just grab I'm just going to read a portion so people listening know what we're talking about. I'm just going to grab it actually from the EAF executive summary, and it's because it sums it up so nicely here. And the application is for a novel erosion control project called a pressure equalization module, PEM system, proposed on 4 contiguous Napeague Bay properties. The properties collectively comprise roughly 835 linear feet of shoreline, where the average erosion rate has been more than 5 feet per year between 2001 and 2018. The system consists of a series of narrow diameter plastic pipes installed below the surface of the beach between the toe of the dune and the mean low water boundary. The intended function of the system is to accelerate the vertical dissipation of wave water landward of mean low water into the sand below. Sediment suspended in the wave would be deposited on the beach instead of being carried back to the nearshore area where the waves retreat. The deposition of sand would slow or ideally reverse what has been a severe erosion rate in an area over the past 20 years or more. And I think it's an excellent summary, I feel. And Brian also goes on to mention that there was one of these applications down in 2008 in Hillsborough, Florida, that we all have seen the photos and all, excuse me, and it was permitted by the Army Corps of Engineers. But I will go on as far, and we can bounce around between members. I'll be fairly brief here because there's been so much on these hearings and so much information out there that we've all heard and we've all read. To simply say that I am in favor of this, of approving all 4 of these. I do not see any difference in these applications. There are little different conditions at either end with regard to what's there as far as along Walford Lane. We've got some of the rocks and things on that end of the beach, but that's really not at all part of this application. And down at the other end at the 623 Shore Road site, there's near the McMahon land, there's that groin, but again, that's not part of this application. And but otherwise, I mentioned that because otherwise it's pretty much, it's the exact beach. What's it, 835 feet long? And you'll note that there are only 4 installations of these PEMs, which I found to be shocking, that they would not be proposed to be more frequently. But there are only 4, one linear set in front of each one of these properties. And that's what they are applying for. They will be doing, and I'm sure our council will make sure all this is written into our determination well, that there will be semi-annual reports. There will be annual reports on this. There will be monitoring much more frequently. I believe they're setting up some cameras and things like that. I believe, I know I'm interested in this as a trial. I believe the planners and the trustees are as well. If any one of these does become exposed, there's like a 2-foot flexible top portion that's acting as basically the wick or the screen. So it's not like somebody on the beach would stub their toe on a steel pipe or a PVC pipe. It would actually be kind of like a bungee thing, flexible and compressive. So frankly, I'm excited to see. I think this was very well thought out. I think it was very well presented. I have faith it's going to be monitored well. And I'm excited to see if there is any difference, because you never know, something like this could make a difference in our wonderful town out here with all the issues we have along the coast. So having said that, why don't I move next to Vice Chair Deline? Roy, you want to make some comments on this?
Mr. Chairman, I agree. I think this is a project that is worthy of the town to undertake, in my opinion. I think that, as far as doing it as a pilot program, I think there are also concerns
Hang
that
on a second. Roy, this is not a pilot program. This is on for an NRSP for these structures. This is not a pilot program, and you are not approving a pilot program. You're approving an RSP that will run with this in perpetuity.
Thank you. Regardless of that, I think there were some concerns that were brought up during the hearing that we should talk about. And John, I think you already mentioned that, and that is the monitoring. I think there should be close monitoring to the town, and I would even the ZBA should be a part of that. The other thing that was brought up that I think we should discuss is whether we should request a bond in case these structures, when needed to be pulled, are not pulled by the property owners. And I think we should discuss whether or not we're going to require that bond. So with that, I also look forward to approving this application.
Thank you. Thank you, Roy. Ed, you want to take some comment, Ed?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we did get a very complete presentation from a scientific point of view about the history of this proposed project, where it was tried in Florida. It was also tried in Europe. I think it was Denmark and Italy. It's basically a dewatering project. It's a bit of speculative science. We're hoping that it's going to work. We're not sure that it is. But as a contained and controlled experiment, I think it's placed right where we can make a very good judgment about whether or not this is going to be successful or not be successful. I think if this had been in another part of the beach that was more well-traveled, we'd have had other concerns. You've already brought up the fact that people might, if they become exposed, have some susceptibility to tripping, getting damaged on them. But this is not a well-traveled beach in that sense. It is contained on both sides by properties that don't allow a terrible amount of access. There is a Mulford roadside. At the January 26th hearing, I did raise a couple of points, and I want to revisit them. I think they have been answered to a certain extent. I was concerned about the overbeach access from Mulford Lane. They have to bring equipment on from Mulford Lane. How did the residents on Mulford Lane react to that? Had the applicants reached out to them? Had we got a reaction from them? Subsequently, we have had some mail in that area. I was concerned also whether or not what the liability of the town would be. It was pointed out by Vice Chair Deline that if this project were to go in, and in all good faith right now, of course, they'll take it to completion, but things happen occasionally. And if there was to be abandoned by the applicants, what would be the liability to the town to remove the PEMs and to restore the approach off of Mulford Lane and repair any other damage that might happen? I think that has to be approached by the consideration of a bond. The trustees have dealt with many of these as well, have recommended a bond. I think we have to find some way to protect the town, that if this project did not go to completion, that the town is not going to be liable for any kind of expense for what was basically a private project conducted by four homeowners, four property owners. I do think that the, let me just see here. Oh yeah, the liability. I think that there were several letters that came in. One was from homeowners on Mulford Lane. Initially, there was, I think, some apprehension and concern, but eventually there was a letter that we received that did show support for the project from the neighbors. I think that was a good thing. And in summation, I think that when we have a chance to do something, as you've said, Mr. Chair, that gives us an opportunity to study potential erosion control under these conditions, I think this is a less painful way for us to observe it. It's not a particular expense to the town, of course. And additionally, I think that's enough of a controlled area. And I think that if the promises that have been made to see to it that the construction is contained and that it does not do damage, collateral damage, I think this is a win, potential win for us. I do think that we'll all be very happy if it succeeds, and we all have a certain amount of doubt that it will. But that is what an experiment's about, and I see it in that light. So I am happy to approve this as long as those concerns that protect the homeowners in the area and protect the beach long-term are observed by the applicants.
Thank you for the comments, Ed. Terry?
Okay, I'll add a few things. I agree. I know at the hearing, the initial hearing, they had a lot of loose ends. It was kind of loosey-goosey. But subsequent to the hearing, we did get a number of updates. We did have the trustee permits. That was great. It's well-written, and I think it does cover a lot of liability in that. I'm very happy about the trustees. As member Johan stated, there were some neighbors that had concerns about the access over Mulford Lane. And I think, and on March 18th, I see an email that we did receive from the Homeowners Association, president of the Nappy Beach Club, that they had overwhelmingly approved those accesses, and they do have some concerns and additional items to be addressed. Now, I don't know if that's the last document I seem to see on it, but I assume that they will tighten that up with the homeowners prior to this project happening. The other document I want to reference is Dr. Laska sent us on February 17th with a few updates about the applications, with some more specific information, including some monitoring protocols, which were tightened up also. And that came from, where did that come from? Great Ecology. But it was via email, and all 4 applicants did apply for and receive approval from New York State Department of Environmental Conservation also to move forward with the project. I too am looking to approve it. And, I'm not sure what is in the town's purview here when we talk about bond for the town. I'm not sure. But
Council, you want to?
we would need one also besides the trustees.
Well, you can, if you are conditioning, you cannot condition this approval on any time period. There's no duration. You can only condition it on things such as a valid trustee permit is a condition that they must maintain. Should they ever not get that permit, and then there would be the condition that the structures be removed. And if that's the case, there you can bond should they not remove them from the public portion of this project. So we would not be bonding for them to remove them off of their own property, but it would be posting a bond so that there would be monies for the town to remove them, whether it be the trustees, or the trustees generally look to the town to assist in the removal when there's items on the public portion of the property.
Yeah, you mentioned a good thing. The amount of term. I know they want to do this for a number of years, and we have the reporting. Could we also put a stipulation in there if they miss one of the semi-annual reports that are in that document, that would terminate the NRSP?
I think that's too
It doesn't
restrictive.
terminate. I mean, the approval would be, the conditions for continued use of it, it would come back for jurisdiction because they had failed to follow through on the conditions.
So back us.
There can also be that it's valid while it is getting objective results. You can't do a subjectively saying, well, I think there are better, the ZBA thinks there are better products out there, or it's not getting the result that we had anticipated. But to have objective results of that, it is, and I don't want to make the decision for the board, but for an example, saying that it has halted the erosion by the objective monitoring, we can see that it is halted, or it has reversed some of the erosion, or even if it were to not have a significant difference on that, but just condition on that it's not creating additional detriment to properties, nearby properties, that it doesn't in some way cause detriment to other properties that they can determine from the monitoring. So those are things that you can condition it on. You just can't say, well, the trustees can give a permit with an end date. This is an NRSP, just like if it were on any other property, those are in perpetuity.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't say 5 years. You can say that the NRSP is valid so long as there is a trustee permit, a valid trustee permit.
Mm-hmm.
You
That
can
makes
say
sense.
so long as the monitoring is showing that there is a benefit, a objective way of determining that there is a benefit to this project. And you would have to articulate what those objective ways of measuring that would be.
Thank you, Nancy Lynn. And last but certainly not least, Board Member Brenneman. Tim, comments, please. And thanks again for that, Nancy Lynn. Appreciate it. Tim?
Sure. And I'm appreciative of my fellow board member comments. I agree with everything that's said here. I am also supportive of this. Dr. Alaska used I thought, a great phrase, which is, this is passive technology. And I think that's one of the things that gives me great comfort in this. I think anytime we're getting into the middle of nature, and specifically anything that relates to mitigating efforts along the waterfront, we have to be worried about potential unintended consequences. We certainly know that hardened structures have consequences. And it kind of all falls under the category as the cure worse than the disease. And in this case, I really feel like the simplicity of this project and the notion of using wave action to build the beach as opposed to erode the beach to be a very compelling idea. And I think it's worthy of this approval. So for that reason, and for everything that's already been said, I am also in favor of approving this application, or these applications, I should say.
Thank you, Tim, and thank you, board members. Just one last comment.
Chair,
Yeah, go ahead.
We move on with summary. I do need someone to go through the factors for a special permit, finding, such as proposed use in harmony with the special permit uses and the general standards. The usual. I need someone to go through those and make sure that we have a finding on those. I know that these are different, and it's hard to.
Doesn't the EAF
but
cover that?
I need them for the determination, so I need you to go through them.
Yeah.
Council, wouldn't that be part of the EAF and the coastal assessment? No?
The EAF does not have, are you going to adopt the EAF as your findings of fact? Because usually during a discussion, you go through, like with a variance, you talk about all of the, is it compatible with the neighborhood, is it so on and so forth. These are things like the nature of the use, the lot area, properties, compatibility, those kinds of things.
Sure.
I'm gonna need some discussion of that.
I can walk those through. Council, can you just give me where that is in the code? I have the code pulled up here. Can I?
It's 255, 850, John, I believe.
850. Okay, great. 1 second. As I pull this up, Council, just a comment. Before I moved on, I was actually going to ask you, Council, or discuss with regard to all of our conversation about the bonding and the reports and all on this. I imagine in the application, in the determination, it will be allowed for the planning department and the zoning board and the trustees and all to inspect this every 6 months to kind of, in other words, when a report is submitted, I'm sure some of us are going to want to take a look and see, to see the site. Does that make sense, Council, as far as being part of the determination?
Yeah, one of the things that I wanted, and I'm kind of jumping ahead because I want to make sure we have everything we need in here. So we'll have the factors that we're going to go through. Then I just wanted to discuss the conditions. And while I'll just jump ahead to, I know that I would assume from the conversations or the statements that you've made, you want to incorporate the conditions of the trustee's permit. You
Yes, we do.
Want to make sure that there's a valid trustee's permit, and we'll note in the determination that at this time, the trustee's permit expires on November 8th, 2025. The conditions that are in the EAF, there is one condition in there that there be a definitive time frame, which you can't have a end dates of a NRSP. So without that, the rest of the conditions in there. And then if we can articulate the criteria that you would want for a termination, I know that if you wanted to expand upon, because I think there was some discussion, I made notes here about whether that, if they're exposed to severe weather, the timeliness of responding to any potential danger. And then what if there is a basis for or a condition when there are if there are unintended consequences, and then we can place that there has to be a bond, just like we do it could be like a CNR where the bonding is made available so that it is available to the town should there be a termination of the NRSP and these projects, their time period for the applicants to remove them if they lose the NRSP, and if they don't do that of their own accord during that time period, that there is a bond posted for the town to be able to come in and remove. And the language of that will also have in there that it is in as much as the town may need to enter upon the applicant's property in order to effectuate the removal of the parts of the structure that are on the public property or on the trustee's property that they have that is already that is part of the bond. So it's not on, it's an enter as well as a bond to remove.
Okay, thank you, Nancy Lynn. So, Council,
Council, can we, aside from the period of time in the trustee permit is pretty detailed on notification and if something goes wrong with the PEM and timeframes as to how quickly that needs to be addressed. So could we condition our conditions on all of those, a lot of those that seem to be covered in the trustee permit?
Mm-hmm. Yes, you can just adopt those. Since that had been raised as well, you have the ability to be more stringent if you want to, but you can adopt those by either referencing and incorporating every one of those conditions. Do note that when the trustees, if they renew this, or the trustees could change their conditions. So do you want to reference that whatever conditions are in a trustee's permit, or do you want to reference these specific conditions in case there's a different board of trustees who decide that most of these are not necessary? If you just reference what's the permit in general, and those are changed, you will have no control over that. If you can reference them and say whatever is in the one that was signed or was provided, or it's part of the record that's in the 2020 trustee permit, those conditions, regardless of what additional conditions may be in the next permit, regardless of what those conditions say, these are the ones that you want in your approval.
Now, could we also condition that Lazy Point project, the monitoring protocols, that they follow that? The one that's dated, I believe it's the latest, February 17th.
Yes.
Oh, that was a yes, correct, Nancy Lynn?
Yes, it is. I'm sorry.
Yeah, good. Shall I, Nancy, if you're finished, are you finished, Terry? Take all the time
Yeah,
you need.
I think I'm finished.
Okay, so council, next, moving on with regard to the special permit, I'm at Article 5. Shall I go to 255-540, these general standards? Is that what we're looking for?
Well, just to try to make it easier for you I'm referencing the cheat sheet I gave you guys over a year ago, I think.
Yeah, I have those in front of me, John, if you want me to read them, go through them.
Sure, I have the 255-540. It's from that, I guess, but go ahead, Roy, if you might, please. Go ahead, Roy, if you please.
250, 850, 255-850, right? Or 540. I have 850 in front of me.
I'm not sure which one she needs.
Yeah, it's
the special permits.
Well, that's a variant standard.
It's a special permit. So no special permit can be granted unless you find and determine that the nature of the use will be in harmony and promote the general purposes of this chapter as set forth in 255-111. So that's the general purposes of
zoning. Yeah.
That the lot area is sufficient, appropriate, and adequate for the use, as well as a reasonably anticipated operation and expansion thereof. That the adjacent properties will not be prevented from the orderly and reasonable use of those properties. That it's compatible, it's suitable for the location.
Yeah, this is 540, right.
Yeah, it's 540.
You're right,
exactly.
It's 540, right. Okay, so Roy, why don't you go ahead? Why don't you take it, Roy, if you please?
All right, so nature of use, the use proposed will be in harmony with and promote the general purpose of this chapter as the same are set forth in 255-111 hereof. So with most of these standards, I'm just going to say that in my mind, there's a general note, and that is when it comes to natural resources, the natural resources in my mind are not being degraded. I think they're, if anything, this project is going to stall the degradation of the natural um, uh, erosion of the beach and possibly accrete the beach. We will see accretion. So, and that's a general thing as we go through these standards that I will be referring to. But the lot area, I think the lot area is sufficient for these for this project. Adjacent property. In this case, there are the adjacent properties are part and parcel of this permit. They're all in working together to achieve this NRSP. Compatibility, the site of the proposed use is suitable for the location of such use in the town and is sited at that location. The proposed use will in fact be compatible with its surroundings. Again, the general thought of this halting of the erosion of the beach and possible accretion applies here too. Effect on its specific existing uses. Again, the same general thought applies here too. That we will see hopefully see an improvement on the conditions of the property. The use definition, the proposed use conforms to the town definition of the special permit. Yes, it does. Circulation, access facilities are adequate for the estimated traffic. That does not apply in this case, in my opinion. Parking does not apply in this case. Buffering and screening does not apply. Runoff and waste. I do not think that, well, we're dealing with stormwater possibly, but I don't think that sewage is applicable to this thing. But again, the general thought applies. Environmental protection. The natural characteristics of the site are such that the proposed use may be introduced there without undue disturbance or disruption. This application meets that requirement. Compliance with other laws, and I think we've discussed that. And the conformity with other standards. And I think this, again, the overall general thought on, in my view, of this project is to improve the environmental condition of the beach at this point.
Okay, thank you, Roy.
Coastal structure.
I agree. Go ahead, Carrie.
These are coastal structure. Or they're not identified as such?
I don't believe they are, council. I don't think we did.
You'd have to ask planning that. I
don't believe we did.
They are.
Didn't we make a determination on that?
No.
I believe, if I may,
Michael?
that there had been a determination. This was brought up at a work session prior to the hearing when discussing the application as to whether or not it fit that definition as a coastal structure, and then therefore would have needed a variance. And I believe the board determined that.
Okay,
That's right. Yeah.
correct. So we're not, they're not.
Correct.
Yeah, that's what I recall. Yeah. So, I agree with Roy's assessment. Any comments on that, board members, before we move along from that, those standards? Any other comments, board members?
No.
No.
Okay, great. So next, council, I pulled up the LWRP, and I'm not sure what you, does it refer to Appendix E, perhaps, Coastal Erosion Hazard Act regulations, or in general? Do we just want to make a statement that we believe this is in keeping with the LWRP? Council?
Mike, can you walk him through that?
Yeah.
Generally planning.
I believe Brian sent around both the EAS and the coastal assistance, the coastal assessment form earlier.
Okay.
In those, he made the determination, should the board adopt it, that the planning department believes that it's consistent with the LWRP.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, that the EAFs that were circulated there's a negative declaration with regards to secra.
Right. I agree with that. We have that in front of us. We do have those EAFs that we'll go to next. Well, Council, how do you want us to handle this for your on your behalf as far as the determination? I feel myself personally, this is in keeping with the LWRP. Board members, your
Yeah,
opinions?
I mean, I don't know offhand what reach that Nepean Bay, that area is in, but this whole project seems to be in keeping with the LWRP.
Yeah, I can pull up this map, but Tim, Roy, Ed?
I agree.
Agree.
Okay, great.
And do you have any more specificity for the conditions on the approval? Because you've all have talked about approving it. Is there any criteria?
I think
I know
the
that-
basic criteria that Brian outlined in his report, which was on the second page, where he said this department does not object to the issuance of the permit for up to 5 years, which I understand we can't say. But he said, provided that permit conditions are incorporated to help ensure pedestrian safety, mitigation measures should adverse impacts develop, and removal if adverse impacts cannot be mitigated. That seems to be a nice, succinct summary of the concerns.
It is, except for I need,
Okay.
what is, you need to, there has to be, in order for it to be legally sufficient, there has to be criteria.
Well, can we reference the Mulford Avenue homeowners approvals that we have in that letter where they approve the accesses? As if that were not to be there, that would create a whole other.
The access is only to install them. So once they have been installed,
Or take them out.
or take them out. I don't think they gave approval to take them out, which would be an interesting thing. So they would need to have approval not only to put them in, but also to take them out.
I would think our condition right now,
We would need our condition to have both. But in his summary of the mitigation, that there's some things that are very specific, when that notice before installation, no clearing or disturbance when there's the, without, the toe of the dune. Obviously, during protected shorebird nesting, so on and so forth. We do have the monitoring protocol, which they did provide, which is extremely helpful. But then what does this board consider to be an adverse impact? I mean, I think that's, generally to say it's an adverse impact, should it be, things if they are creating a physical hazard to individuals using the beach? I'm brainstorming here a little bit with you, because we're talking about pedestrian safety. What are, if adverse impacts develop and they can't be mitigated?
I think that's handled.
Who's going to determine what that is?
Isn't that handled in the trustee permit though? I think they deal with that in terms of safety, right?
They do. It's spelled out pretty significantly there. And I think I'm on board with the idea of following the trustee language on this.
Okay, and so
I think
for this current
incorporating
permit, specify the current permit. Yeah.
the current permit, okay. Just in case, the next one doesn't have all that detail.
Yeah, and Terry, I took a look. This looks like it's Reach 3 Accabonac.
Yeah.
It notes that includes the beach is adjacent to Gardens Bay, except between Albert's Landing Road and Barnes Hole Road. And I don't think we're there. So I think that's the Reach.
So it doesn't list anything specific, anything other there? Okay.
No, that's the only thing that mentions, it goes from Accabonac Creek and Harbor, Pussy's Pond, Fresh Pond, and the beaches adjacent to Gardens Bay, except those at Albert's Landing Road, between Albert's Landing and Barnes Hole Road.
I don't know. Well, I don't know if this, if this is
don't-
there.
Yeah, it's not there, right? I
Michael,
don't.
do you know if
Yeah.
this is there? I don't know.
No, I don't believe it's between those beaches. They're further west, correct, Michael? Correct, Michael? Delalio, Michael?
I mean, the only thing I would add, if, and this is for discussion, guys, if there were to be, as far as negative impact, the only negative impact, and I don't want to be too restrictive on this either, but would be if in 2 consecutive years there's continuing beach erosion, should they be removed? Something to that effect, but I don't know if we should be that restrictive. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that. Roy.
yeah, I wouldn't do that because, go ahead, Jerry.
No, I mean, I think they say in their plan and in the whole presentation and everything that this easily is going to take 5 years, and they're doing it on a smaller scale, which will make the time frame longer before this.
So maybe after the
positive
5 years,
result.
if there's beach or continued beach erosion, if there's if there's continued beach erosion, is it at that time, do we pull the plug?
Roy, there is language in the trustee permit. And it says during the permit period, if the trustees believe this project has advanced erosion or otherwise caused harm to the trustee beach, the trustees may request early termination of the
Yeah, I
permit.
think this is very well written, guys. So I
Yeah.
do.
No, that permit is good.
Removal of the PEMs. I mean, I think it's kind of all in there.
Yeah,
Okay.
I agree with Jim.
And what I won't have a specific amount for the bond, but I know we do have in our code with regards to requiring a posting of a bond for some emergency. I think now you can't do geocubes without posting a bond for their removal
Yep,
after the permit has expired. So I will use comparable language and send that around to you before next week so that you will have time to review it and give me feedback if that's consistent. Unless you'd like to pick a number, I don't want to put you all on the spot to come up with a good number.
Yeah, I'm
But
good.
I thought
The
that would be.
trustee permit has $2 million.
Nancy Lynn, the only problem with like I'm thinking about is with a bond is if we're making an approval based on in perpetuity, how does a bond stay in perpetuity?
It's the bond, it goes until it's released. We have bonds posted when there's,
Okay,
they need to do road improvement and they never get around to finishing up the road because it's in a subdivision. The bond is held by the town for
Great.
as long as it needs.
all right, great.
Can I just
Okay.
add, John, can I just
Yeah,
add for a minute?
sure.
In Brian's draft TAM of 42820, under the summary of mitigation, most of what he's listed there has been discussed here already. And I think that Member Berger referenced the letter that we got February 26, 21 from the Nat Beach Club. And I think we've discussed those points there. They need to be guaranteed. And I think that the trustees report or permit has basically done it. But I do want to say that under the summary of mitigation, item B, and this may seem obvious, but I want to read it in any way. No clearing, excavation, or other disturbance of any kind should be permitted landward of the toe of the dune without written authorization of the board. There's language in the trustee permit that would protect us from that, but I think that has to be made very clear. Equipment can't go above the toe of the dune. And I know that the applicants would not want that, but construction sometimes doesn't always follow the rules very exactly. And it seems to me we'd be very concerned if we saw collateral damage happening, landward of the area where the work is taking place. But most of the rest that I see in the summary of mitigation has already been discussed, the monitoring and the guarantees to the community. So I'm comfortable with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ed. Any other comments, board members?
I just need some clarification from council. What do you mean the NRSP runs in perpetuity? I mean, if something is in NRSP jurisdiction and they have a project, we give an NRSP for something else, totally different. They put up a shed. if they're going to do something else on that property another time, they again have to come for an NRSP.
But if you give
So I
them an
don't
NRSP to have a
think
shed,
anything.
you can't say you can have the
Take it
shed
away.
for 5 years.
5 years, okay, all right.
So we're saying you can have these PEMs forever. Trustees are saying you can have the PEMs for 5 years because you're on our property.
Okay,
We're saying you can have the PEMs forever.
Right.
So we just, and that's very clear in the case law because other ZBAs in the past have tried to, on new things, and it tends to be coastal structures that are built close to the coast, that they have tried to put either personal conditions on it, only this owner, only, if it's under these circumstances, and that it can't be, and it also can't be durational, that it's only good for the next, 5 years or whatever. So I just want to make sure that we don't get into having this approval vulnerable because it's not done correctly.
But can we
Well,
say,
in item E, that on Brian's list,
Yes.
it should identify a definitive timeframe for the validity.
Yeah, we can't do that.
but
We can
Can we
reference
say-
the trustee permit.
Yes.
can we say, council, that if the conditions of the trustee permit are not met at any point in time, that they have to come back and for a renewed NRSP? Is that one way to handle it?
You can't renew the NRSP. There
Or-
is,
You know what I'm
They
getting
should-
at, right?
yeah, because there's no requirement that they renew it.
Council, Roy, did it?
So you can't do that. I mean, if they're not following the conditions, just like if you give an approval for a variance and they don't continue to do the conditions that are on there, it could be the basis for, with a variance, it's one basis to have a C of O revoked because you no longer meet the conditions that of your approval on the property. An NRSP, it's if they're not, we basically would put it in a CNR. All the conditions would go in a CNR so that's how you can enforce it.
But what about a permit? What about a permit where it's ongoing maintenance as far as like dredging or a dredging permit or something like that? That has a time frame on it.
That's a dredging permit. This is not, this is an NRSP. NRSP, it runs
I
with the
understand.
land.
I understand that, yeah, but,
Yeah.
okay.
So if this had been a, like the harvester is coming in to get a permit, environmental permit to run that is, the town can issue that kind of permit. When the town licenses a business to run the snack bar on the beach, that can be for a specific time frame because that's a different kind of licensing permit. With NRSPs, the way that the special permits are set up, they don't have a durational time frame.
For me, council, this raises a different question, and that is, if the NRSP has been granted based on the proposed project as drawn now, if along the way, the applicants and their advisors thought, Dr. Laska thought that let's improve this by adding more to what we see, or let's change it slightly, do they have to come back to us, or are they going to get
Oh, sure.
free rein to change that project?
They would have to come back, both they would have to get the trustees to change their permit, and they would need a new NRSP for basically a rehearing if it's just a slight modification. If they're looking to double, triple the number of structures in there, and even if just one property owner wanted to come back, his determination would come back for he could request a rehearing to modify the approval to include more structures.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we move on? Board members, you ready to move on with the EAF?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Nancy Lynn. Thank you, board members. So council, here we have our, I'm just reading from one of them now. I have in front of me is the Douglas Lloyd, which is first on the list. Care of Great Ecology, 379 West Broadway, 5th floor, New York, New York, 10012 is the applicant. I read the executive summary. I wonder how much of this you want me to read before we jump down to part two, the impact assessment.
Since the actual documents are part of the record,
Yeah,
you can just, you don't have to read through them. But
okay,
having read those and as long as in any of the findings of fact that you're not taking exception with any of those, you
mhm,
can adopt the language for each of those sections without having to read them. And then, but for the record, it would be good to go through the impact assessment and state the findings on the record.
okay, so thank you. I'll make a note that I have read these and I do agree with Brian Franks, the pardon me, the project description and the executive summary, the property history and application materials, the environmental setting portion of it. Board members, do you agree with that as well? Any issues?
I do, and I have read through them as well.
You have to.
As have I, and I agree.
Yeah,
Ed,
I've
yeah.
read through them and I agree.
Okay, thank you. Next, we'll move on to part two, the impact assessment. And I will walk through these and note, so we'll just click through them. Number one is, will a proposed action create a material conflict with an adopted land use plan or zoning regulations? And it is noted as no or a small impact may occur. I agree with that, board members.
Yep.
Yes,
I agree.
Okay. Next two, will the proposed action result in a change in the use or intensity of use of land? Again, no, or a small impact may occur. I agree with that.
yes,
Agree.
I
I
agree.
agree.
Okay. Number three, will the proposed action impair the character or the quality of the existing community? Again, no, or small impact. I agree.
Agreed.
I agree.
Agree.
And here,
Okay. Number four, will the proposed action have an impact on the environmental characteristics that cause the establishment of a critical environmental area, CEA? And no, or a small impact, and I agree with that.
Agreed.
Ditto. Yes.
I agree.
Okay. Number five, will the proposed action result in adverse change in the existing level of traffic or affect existing infrastructure for mass transit, biking, or walkway? Again, I agree that it is no, or a small impact may occur.
Agree.
Good.
I agree.
same.
Okay, number six, will the proposed action cause an increase in the use of energy and it fails to incorporate reasonable available energy conservation or renewable energy opportunities? Again, no, or a small impact. I agree with that.
Agreed.
I agree.
Okay, number seven, will the proposed action impact existing A, public or private water supplies, B, public or private wastewater treatment utilities? Again, noted no, or a small impact may occur, and I agree with that.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Agree.
Okay, eight, will the proposed action impair the character or quality of important historic, archaeological, architectural, or aesthetic resources? It's noted no, or a small impact may occur, and I agree with that.
Agreed.
Agree.
I agree.
I agree.
Okay, well, number nine, will the proposed action result in adverse change to the natural resources? For example, wetlands, water bodies, groundwater, air quality, flora and fauna? And it's noted no, or a small impact may occur, and I agree with that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I agree.
Okay, we're getting there. Number 10, will the proposed action result in an increase in the potential for erosion, flooding, or drainage problems? Again, noted no, or a small impact may occur, and I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
11, will the proposed action create a hazard to the environmental resources or human health? It's noted no, or a small impact may occur. I agree with that.
Agreed.
Agreed.
I agree.
Okay, thank you. Next, council, we have part three, the determination of significance. Shall we do anything here, or do we just note that we, council, on number part three? I'm up to part three.
I think that you've discussed, part three, you need to do under 9, 10, and 11. You can do
Okay.
those as a group such as, having read and adopted. And then
Right.
I think you've already discussed summary of mitigation other than the definitive time frame, which we've discussed. You can adopt the rest of those if that's what you're comfortable with.
Okay, thank you for that. I have read these and I am comfortable with part 3, specifically items listed 9, 10, and 11, and as well with the summary of mitigation. I read those and I agree with those as well. Board members?
Same.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, agree.
Okay.
So all, at this point, if Mike, I know you're on the line, if you can ask Brian to revise item E in the summary of mitigation to remove the definitive timeframe from that condition. And then these can be prepared for the chairman's signature, which he can do this week, and we'll adopt them with the determination at next week's meeting.
Great. And he misspelled my name. He had a lot on his plate, but there's shame on him.
We want to make sure that's correct.
Exactly.
Do we have to
It's gonna
add in?
go downhill from here.
Hmm?
The meeting will go downhill from here.
And Matt from LTV has to know it's Whelan, not Whalen. We do like Richard Whalen, but that's not me. Anyway, council, that sounds fine. Any motion or anything else, council, that you
No,
need on
because
this?
At this point, as long as everyone's in agreement on the EAFs with the one noted change on it, then the board is basically is giving the chair the authority to sign off on these, and then we will make sure that those are included in each of these records and referenced in the determination.
Okay. Do we have to add the reference to the trustee permit into the summary of mitigation?
It doesn't have to be on EAF because it will be in your other determinations.
Okay.
I just don't want anything that's contradictory. Well, they don't have to be identical. They just can't have one that's contradictory.
Okay, well, thanks, Nancy Lynn, for all your help on this, and board members, and Brian Frank and Michael Delalio. Okay, so does that take care of us then? It sounds like board members all agree with that?
Yeah, but do we have to do the coastal assessment form too?
I think you already did that earlier.
With the LWRP discussion.
Oh, that was the LWRP.
Yeah.
That was that, yes.
Okay, that was that.
Right. Okay, so
Thanks for
council,
keeping us on track, Terry, but I had to check this.
Okay.
yeah. Okay, let's move along next. Under post-hearing decisions, we have 216 Old Montauk Highway LLC at 216 Old Montauk Highway, Montauk tax map number 300-87-3-12.4. And Terry, I believe this was your application, correct, Terry?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, and then I'm sure the board, if you need something on the screen, the planners, I'm sure can help us out. Probably the survey might be the best, if you wouldn't mind, Michael or Eleni, who's ever there. Michael, maybe? Sorry. Let's see who's there. Yeah, you're all there.
If you could zoom in a little bit, I guess, on the carport area.
And if I may, Terry, so I don't interrupt you later, the first thing that I need the board to determine is whether or not the board finds that this is significantly different than the very recent determination made on this property. And if it's not significantly different and that's your decision, then that will end the discussion at this point. If you find that the applications are significantly different, then you can proceed to making a decision on this application.
Thank you.
Procedurally, I need that first.
Yeah,
All right.
thank you. Terry?
I guess we'll start with the differences in the application.
Mm-hmm.
As we all know, there was a denial of this application for a carport back in 2019. I'm going to reference the memo from the planner, Eleni Nikolopoulos, on January 21st, 2021, noting the differences between the current application and the prior one. There was a surveying error in the that caused the applicant to apply for variances they no longer need, which was used in the initial application. And the surveyor failed to include part of the area of the flag strip in the lot area. So it made the application contained larger, greater number of variations, variances required for lot area, lot coverage area, and also I believe there was a pyramid application in the initial application, some of which was modified prior to the first hearing. The previous application proposed a carport to be 84.1 feet from the bluff toe. This application was proposing it to be 83.7 feet from the bluff toe. The carport at the time of the 2020 public hearing was proposed to be 360 square feet, and the current proposal at the time of the hearing proposes it to be 310 square feet. So a number of the variances were reduced from after the surveying error was discovered and corrected. So I feel that this is a significant change to the project, to the application. Do we take a vote on that?
Can just ask if everyone.
Everyone
agrees.
think this was a significant change?
I think I agree with that. I think the significant change was in the request, the relief that's being requested,
Right.
more so than the actual project. But I think that's significant enough that we should reconsider this based on the current application.
Yes.
And relief requested.
Yes, the current application had just one variance, the one noted for the bluff toe variance, and an NRSP. It's an NRSP. So we did have the hearing. I have, that's the latest survey, I assume. The hard copy I have in front of me is dated July 7th, 2020. That looks like the same.
Yes, this is July 7th.
Yeah, good. Okay. And so we had the hearing, and the applicant, there were a lot of things submitted. Well, okay, it's for a 310-foot carport. The survey error corrected, no new variances for total coverage needed. The variances for 41.3 feet from the toe of the bluff, where 125 feet is required. This property is a pre-existing non-conforming property, originally built prior to the era of zoning, prior to any zoning. The property is entirely seaward of the Ceha line, and it is also part of the LWRP Reach Number 9 that covers the Montauk Ocean properties from Hither Hills, the eastern part of Hither Hills, to Ditch Plains. Which the LWRP came around the time of 1993, apparently after a bad storm year in the area of the ocean here. The application submitted, the applicant's agent rather, did submit a determination from a neighboring property as evidence, but I think that determination had nothing to do. It was for one of the neighboring houses that is high up on the bluff. They were referencing, it was an application that was entirely out of jurisdiction for this bluff toe. And so I think that was not really applicable to this case. This case is extremely different. I think that this application does not meet the variance standards. The house is completely pre-existing, non-conforming. So any change to this property would increase or add to the existing nonconformity. I think it is also not a candidate for an NRSP, partially for the same reasons. There was the LWRP Reach 9 clearly states that if there was a storm surge, or if the property due to a storm or other issue gets destroyed, that they would not be allowed to reestablish that residence. In addition to we had 6 letters from neighbors, all of which were in opposition to this project. We also had a report that was submitted by the applicant from Dr. Lee Wisher of Woods Hole. And in his report, he described the condition of the bluff and the environmental conditions to be in good condition at this point, even though it's in the south of Seha. He did have a photo in his document on page 3 that took a shot eastward on the beach to properties that are farther east on the beach, as that I'm not really sure what the point was supposed to be, but that these are also on the beach. So, but it wouldn't make a difference. Those structures, those homes would also still be subject to the rules and the code of the LWRP Reach 9 and the natural resources. There was some discussion about, I guess, some drainage or possibilities of changing the driveway on this that had been discussed mostly in the first hearing on this. And there was some touch on that in this latter one, as well as some discussion about a sanitary system and difficulty, if any, to ever put a new sanitary on this property. But for me, this goes back to the original. It's a pre-existing.
I didn't catch that.
Not
Please say
conform.
that again.
Okay. That was Alexa. I'm sorry about that. I don't know why she talked to me. She's listening. Okay, sorry about that. Anyway, so I feel that this does not meet the criteria for the area variance. It's a 41.3 variance where 125 feet is needed. So it's about 33% variance, which I do think is substantial for an already non-conforming property. I think it does not meet the standard in the code, the 255-1-40 for non-conforming use. There's a prohibition on physical expansion, enlargement, adding to or reconstruction or changes. It does not meet that. I think the area variance is substantial. And I believe that there is no benefit to the applicant that I think the potential detriment to the town in terms of natural resources and the variance could be greater than any benefit gleaned from the carport, the addition of the carport. There is no other good location on the property for this to be put, but again, it's a completely non-conforming property. And it is a self-created issue because the property, I believe, was bought back in 2010 or 2009. 2009. So I am looking to deny this. I think it does not meet the standards for 255-A50. For the area variance, the benefit, as I said, I believe does not outweigh any detriment that is potentially could be caused to the health, safety, and the town as a whole. I think it does not, as far as the NRSP, does not meet the standards of 255-111 in terms of orderly growth. The property was originally put in prior to any zoning, and the LWRP in 1993 clearly realized that there was an issue with all these structures along this portion of Montauk, of the ocean in Montauk, and houses, and added these to be incorporated into the LWRP in Reach 9. And as we said, these are properties that should not be having any further development or changes, and cannot be reconstructed if there is a destruction of the property due to a storm. I think it does not meet the standards of preservation of natural resources in 255-551D. It should be located on upland. Now that's in the code now. Clearly, that wasn't done at the time, the pre-zoning that this home was built. I think it. Some other codes that I had. Oh, going back to the Wisher report, the photo in page 3, and the houses on the shore, it was testified by the planner, Eleni, at the hearing that, those houses would all be in the same nonconformity and would have issues. It's not that they could be developed any differently. There's also in the code 255-4-12, okay, let me go back to 255-111. The orderly growth that I mentioned, I believe it's not in compatibility with that, in accordance with the comprehensive plan. And item B, protection of neighborhoods, protect the established character of neighborhoods. In this case, the character of the neighborhood will be changed over time due to the following of the LWRP regulations for this area. And I think item H also, safety and health, to secure safety from fire, panic, flood, or storm, or other dangers. I think this project could have a detriment in those areas also. And 255-540, I believe it is not compatible with 255-540 for the grant of the special permit. No. The property is really not adequate for the use of the proposed carport, and is not consistent with the residential use of adjacent properties. And I believe it is not compatible with 255-410 items C and E. Lesson of danger to life and property caused by coastal flooding and storms. And that may be it in terms of the codes. But I am looking to deny the project.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Ed, comments?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm in agreement with Board Member Berger. She's covered an awful lot of what was in the code. I have a couple of comments I'd like to add, though. I also find that the arguments for granting this request outweigh the arguments for. Specifically, I'm not in favor of granting a bluff setback variance seaward of the Seahawk line. The property is particularly vulnerable when you visit it. It sits well below Montauk Highway in a very vulnerable position. I don't want to recommend any additional structures on this very contained and sensitive lot. We did get a number of letters for the neighbors concerned about destabilizing certain areas, allowing new construction. I think that we open a door of allowing construction on sites like this when they're in violation of and looking for variances and looking for an NRSP when they're already in violation of setbacks from the bluff. This is a particularly sensitive area, and I don't see that the benefit to the client really, to the applicant really outweighs. Berger referenced 255-H-50 of East Hampton Calhoun Code. It asks us to consider whether or not the benefit to the applicant from granting of the area variance or in this instance the setback variance outweighs any detriment which granting of the variance will cause to the general health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood or the town as a whole. I don't see that the benefit to the applicant does rise to that standard. I think that this is a lot that cannot afford additional structures, and I'm not comfortable with us granting this at this time for many of the reasons that were brought up by Member Berger, but also it's a constrained lot. There's very little turnaround there. She did mention that, and it was brought up by some people who did contribute their opinions from neighbors, that it'll be tougher to service in case of a fire or emergency. I'm not in favor of this application, and therefore I'm looking to deny it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Tim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am also in agreement with my fellow board members on the denial of both the variance request as well as the NRSP. As mentioned by Member Johan, I walked down this driveway and it is a severely sloping property. It's a challenging walk down and then even a more challenging walk back up. It's so sloping. It is hard to imagine that anything that is built upland on this property would not have an impact environmentally downstream. This, as noted, the entire structure and proposed carport is southward of the Seahawk line. And it feels like just a really poor public planning for us to approve a structure that another document, the LWRP, would specifically indicate that if that structure were destroyed, that it could not be replaced because of its location. That just doesn't make good sense to me from a public planning standpoint. Also, with regard to the NRSP, I also do not feel like it meets that standard. And I have to say, I was struck by the lack of any strong consideration for mitigation associated with anything, not only this project, but just the property in general. The amount of runoff that's occurring on a paved driveway and so forth, that it just struck me that there was no consideration given for that. So I'm in agreement. I do not believe that this meets our variance standards. I reviewed our decision from 2018, I believe it was. No, I'm sorry, 2020.
Yeah.
And I think that essentially all these same answers to the variance standards apply. Of course, they're different because the standard is different associated with the relief requested. But I continue to think that it fails to meet any of our variance standards, and it is a substantial variance. And so for all of those reasons, I'm looking to deny this application.
Thank you, Tim. Roy? Is Roy muted? Maybe, let me see.
Yes, thank you,
There you go.
Mr. Chairman. I was muted. I also will agree with my other board members on a denial. I will go through some other, without repeating some of the things said subsequent before, but agreeing that the lot is severely constrained. What I think the applicant failed to do here is to look and address the impact of this structure on the property as a whole. Taking into account the Woods Hole report, the Woods Hole report looked specifically at the carport and took made a recommendation that it would not impact. But when you look at the property as a whole, the location of the carport severely impacts the environmental conditions existing on the lot. You have a septic system that is directly related to the toe of the bluff. When that has to be relocated, where is it going to relocate it? They didn't address that situation. They didn't address the situation of the hard asphalt condition on the driveway relative to drainage. As member Tim Brenneman said, that there was very little or no mitigation and forethought to look at proper planning on this property as a whole, and the already constrained lot with negative environmental impacts existing on this property. So I think that they failed to do that. When it comes to the council, Margolin's, as member Berger brought out, reciting the determination of the Selfridge determination, I want to read that into the record and look at the determination. Said the pool house or the Selfridge homestead is proposed in an area of the property previously cleared and disturbed during construction of this existing improvements, and will comply with all required dimensional setbacks of the town code. It meets all its dimensional setbacks. That's fine. The proposed pool house will max out the allowable lot coverage under the town code on the property. In the instant case, the unusually dense coverage on the lot will not pose a detriment to the parcel's natural features. However, this is where it is grossly different from what this application is. It says that existing and the proposed improvements are located landward of the existing residence and 264 feet from the toe of the bluff. It's a different application. I don't think it could be likened to this application, and I think we have to look at this application in itself, because it is a severely impactful and environmental problem. The compelling part to me, which goes to the outweighing of the neighbors, does the applicant request of the applicant outweigh the detriment to the neighbors? I want to refer to the Ruse letter to the zoning board. Ruse has, his family has owned, he sent a letter in opposition. He said, my family has owned and occupied 192, 194, and 198. That's 3 of the properties his family's for over 70 years. And he says, we are astonished that when 216 was originally built, we have the high water line of the 1938 marked on our property. From that mark, we know the foundation, swimming pool, and first floor of 216 are well below the water line. And I think that this goes through evidence, through testimony, that this lot in particular is in potential danger, and any further development of this property should be restricted.
Okay, thank you, Roy. And thank you, board members, for your thorough comments. I will not be lengthy with my comments. I completely agree with all of your comments, all of the board members, so I will not repeat those. Just to emphasize a couple of things that were brought up by Tim and just now by Roy again, just as far as the mitigation. I mean, the fact that you literally have this sanitary system that's at the toe of the bluff, it's just a shame that this application, notwithstanding that someone who has a house in this situation would not be voluntarily moving that system back and taking advantage of the rebates. It's just a shame, but we can't police that. Obviously, if someone were to do that in the future, that's exactly where they would be putting it, as well as someone in the future might want to deal with some proper mitigation for this drainage, and that's where you need to have your dry wells for that driveway. As Tim says, it's like a ski slope coming down that driveway in the water. It's paved, the water's coming down there, and there's no concern for any of that. And obviously, God forbid, fire vehicles are needed down here. This structure is certainly not going to make life easier with regard to turning around vehicles and accessing the house. And I see no hardship whatsoever that is necessary, compelling the construction of this carport. So I am completely in favor with my fellow board members in denying this application. Council, you have enough on that?
I have everything I need. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, board members. Okay, we're going to skip. We'll wrap up here. Next, we have a few more items. We have next Susan Overbaugh at 253 Westlake Drive in Montauk, tax map number 300-12-3-24. And once again, this is in Montauk. Ed, did you have this one, Ed?
Yes, I did, Mr. Chair.
If you please take it from here, Ed, appreciate it.
Yes, I will. Thank you. The board will remember that the hearing for this was conducted on February 2nd, 2021. The survey, are you putting the survey up, Elaine? Yeah.
Yes,
That
she is,
survey, it should be dated March 12th, 2020. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so. Let me just double check. This is the,
I believe so.
Just
down
scroll
below.
down. There
yes,
you go.
March 12th, 2020.
Yep, Lenny.
This application asks for variances for a deck and an outdoor shower stall, which to the rear and the west of the property, behind the house. The patio at the front of the house, which is also in jurisdiction, and a shed, which you see located in the southwest corner on the survey. And that's looking both for a variance for the 16-inch variance for pyramid law, and also a variance for where it sits relative to the wetland. The period variance, as I just said, is only 16 inches, and it's not really juxtaposed nearby any residence. The wetlands keeps a distance there. The shed is within 22 feet of the wetlands, however. The discussion of moving the shed that we had during the open hearing led the applicant to produce a document from a contractor laying out the large trees and the septic system as they exist behind the house. Studying this drawing, it's obvious that it would be difficult to move the shed to a conforming location to the rear of the house. The 14-foot shed held 10 foot from the property line to the west would then make it sit less than about 6 feet from the homeowner's rear deck. There's a possibility to move the shed to the front yard between the house and the road which is Westlake Drive. But that's probably not desirable as well. This is a tough one to find a way in which you can see that this drawing locating these large trees. At the back, at the rear of the house, there are two large red maples. There was also, I can't remember now if that was a shad, but there's another fairly good sized tree there. And then there's a septic system, which is directly in line with the bathrooms, which are part of that bump out that you see on the house that comes straight out. Therefore, if you tried to move this shed to a better location, wouldn't be fully conforming. You'd be putting it between the tree to the north and the septic system, which is centrally located. Again, 10 foot off the back property line, 14-foot shed. The deck is only 30 feet from the property line as it is. It puts it in a very awkward and probably unusable position. So the client is faced with the shed, having to remove it, move it to the front, probably not putting it someplace they can, putting it someplace any closer to the house there. None of these are very desirable, I don't think, to them at this point. However, we still have to worry about the setback from the wetlands, which you know is to both the south and the west. The other three variances, skipping that for a minute, are not particularly large variances, not a very big ask. That front patio discussion was had about there was a brick patio, which is now, there was a concrete patio, which is now covered by brick, which is obviously larger than the original patio. It is, however, on the off side of the house and 70 feet now from wetlands, and so it's looking for a 30-foot variance. All three variances that were being requested, except for the shed, are in the range of 30 feet to 31 feet. So the deck and the outdoor shower and the patio, for me, were not large asked, and I don't have a problem approving them. The shed, however, raises other questions. If in fact we did not hear back from the client with any, the applicant with any counter on this, I think there was a suggestion by Eleni that if the shed was to be relocated, that it would have gutters and leaders applied to it, and they would go to an appropriate dry well or dry wells as needed, and that would help mitigate the runoff from the roof lines on this. I'm sympathetic to the client and the applicant here because I think that this is a tight spot in the back. I'd rather not see damage to large trees in order to protect the future of this shed. However, the shed is sitting in a spot that's particularly vulnerable to wetland. I would have suggested that had we could come back with the gutters and leaders and dry wells, that I would be willing to approve leaving it where it is, even though it is juxtaposed so clearly to the wetland, because I think that in this particular case, it is a hardship to the client, to the applicant. So in summation, while I find this to be difficult, I would say that I have no problem approving the three variances, the deck, the outside shower, and the front patio. But I do think that the shed would require us to consider, or requires me to consider, whether or not we would approve it if they were to have gutters and leaders added and the proper dry well support. In that case, I'm willing to let it sit where it sits, even though it's a big ask, it's a large variance. Nonetheless, given the property, given the condition of the property, given what their alternatives are to the applicant, I would be willing to have it sit if, in fact, we could divert the water from the roofs into the proper dry wells.
Okay, thank you, Ed, for that thorough analysis. I'm sure we could certainly, if the board agrees on that could certainly be conditioned if it was to be approved, that there be gutters and dry wells if it were to be approved to remain where it is. Terry, you want to go next?
Yeah, I agree with Member Johan. The three, the patio, the outdoor shower, and the deck, are no problem. I don't see the benefit. I do see the benefit for the applicant outweighing any detriment to the house or any adjoining properties or the neighborhood. I think they're not huge variances. A lot of this work had already been done, obviously, so it would be more detrimental, I think, to redo some of that than to just leave it. And getting to the shed, I agree. The leaders and gutters that were listed as the project in the project conditions, I too would be agreeable with that. For a long time, the pyramid variance bothered me, but in looking at the property and recalling the property, both property lines there to the south and to, I guess, what's the west, are filled with wetlands. So I think if there's ever a case of a pyramid not being disturbing to a neighbor or to the neighborhood, it would be this one. It's property that, unless wetlands just disappear, will never be utilized for any other structures or any other homes, to provide, to be a detriment to the view. So, yeah, with the project conditions, and I believe, I don't recall that the applicant was not amenable to that, to the leaders and gutters.
Well, again, it can be, as council can advise, it can be approved with that as a condition. And
Yeah, so I would
Right.
approve that.
it's denied. If it doesn't take place, that would be, well, it would
So I
have to be taken down or moved.
approve the shed and, for the pyramid also.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Roy?
I will agree with that. I don't think I have anything else to add, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I would agree with the deck, shower, and brick patio. I'm concerned about approving a shed that is movable, that is asking for essentially an 80% variance. That is substantial, and it troubles me. So I would deny the shed. I don't feel an obligation to place the shed as a board. I think this is the application that we received. The proposal to me does not meet the variance standards when it comes to the shed, and it's not close. And a big factor is that shed is movable and can be moved to other locations on the property. So I'm in agreement with approving the deck, shower, and brick patio, but I am looking to deny the shed, or yes, the shed.
Okay, thank you, Tim. And again, Ed, thank you for your thorough analysis here. I do appreciate the applicants coming back and laying this out with the surveyor. It looks to be to scale where these trees and the sheds are. I'm sorry, where the trees and the sanitary system are. But I have to say, all of these things were constructed without the proper permits. And I'd have to say that I agree with Board Member Brenneman about, I'm fine with the other three. I'm just not comfortable with the precedence at this shed that was built without the proper permits and being so close to the wetlands. And I believe there are other locations on the site, and maybe they're not. Well, I'll just say that. So I agree with Tim on this. I'm going to deny the shed and approve the rest of the application myself. Should we run around? And Ed, you want to start back with you? We can see what your feeling is and make sure we see who's.
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly sympathetic to the viewpoint that the shed should not be approved. I thought about this one long and hard, and I just don't know that shed will leave that location. Now, the answer might be that you just don't have a shed. But I considered the hardship to the client in this case, admittedly one they brought on themselves, self-inflicted wound. But nonetheless, I thought that given the size of the shed and its the ability for us to divert the water, that we would make the offer. I would be willing to make the offer that gutters and leaders and dry wells would be enough to approve its location. So I'll stay with that, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let's see. Let's be clear how Roy and Terry feel about this. Terry?
I didn't change anything. Approve the shed and approve the shed, period.
You approve the shed?
Yes.
Yeah, and
The whole thing, yes.
with the conditions of the dry well and the.
Dry well, yes. Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Roy, just to be clear, Roy?
Mr. Chairman, to be clear, I was in the camp of denying the shed, but listening to some of the mitigation of Mr. Johan and listening to Member Berger's description of the wetlands and nothing being close to it, I felt that was reasonable in thinking that we could allow it to be in that condition. I think that being said, that's where I am.
Okay, thank you, Roy, and thanks for all your comments. It's nice sometimes. I think it's nice to have a 3-2 vote. I mean, at least it's as far as further applications, the two denials kind of help. Dissenting votes help people understand how seriously we all take these applications. This board does. I thank you all.
Just to be
Counsel?
clear,
Yeah.
that was a suggested condition by the planning department. I don't believe it was offered as or agreed to by the applicant. So it would be conditioned on it, but it will be that they accept that condition in order to get the sheds.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. I mean,
Was it discussed?
It was in the TAM, so it was
was in the
discussed in
TAM,
that they
But
provided.
typically we ask if they accept those conditions, and I don't recall if we asked that.
I think we did, but
I don't know if, I mean, you know,
But nonetheless, Counselor, if you write the determination as such, right, and the landowner does not install the dry well and the gutters and leaders, correct? This would be in violation and would be a code enforcement issue. Or would you?
well, if they don't have the gutters and leaders, they can't get a C of O for that,
Right.
shed. And I don't know if you want to, for the dry well on it would require that they get a building permit for a dry well.
Mhm.
Correct? Yeah, they need to get for the dry well because everything is existing. So in this situation, the way that the TAM is written is that there's no construction or building permits required because it's basically, it's to get a building permit and a C of O in order to legalize what's there. So this is additional work that would need to be on there.
Actually, the dry well, actually, with the excavation at the site, would that require an NRSP, Counsel?
Well, you're giving an NRSP for the structures, so it can be the NRSP would have to have the dry well. It would be the shed with a dry well. So
Right, gotcha. Okay.
NRSP,
It would
so
be
they
part of
get
this at NRSP, you're saying. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
But they would, so that I will make sure that I will work with Eleni to see if there's any conditions that we would want to make sure are added that were not originally in the TAM, because sometimes that there are standard conditions and you'll all be able to review those. Project limiting, yada, yada, that kind of stuff, because we're asking for some construction on the site. So I want to make sure that the board is aware that we would do that. And then it would be conditioned, then that retaining the shed would be conditioned on those.
And regarding the need for a building permit, if the shed was denied, which is very close to being denied, would require a building permit to relocate it.
To relocate it, yes.
Yeah.
But they didn't agree to a relocation spot, so we can't. We had another similar one where there was a conforming spot, and if they had just, they can end up coming back for a second application to put it in a conforming spot. But that one might be able to be, if they found a more conforming spot, if that possibly could go with a administrative, like we did in the other one.
Okay, so I think we're good on this end, right, Counsel?
I think so, yep.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you all. And thank you, Eleni, for your work on this. Okay, we'll move on next. We have, under extensions of time, we have Michael's at 71 South Edgemere Street, Montauk, tax map number 300-28-4-27. And this is extension of time of a 2009 ZBA determination for the construction of a 478 square foot swimming pool and 180 square foot pool house on a parcel of land containing freshwater wetlands. No work has been completed at this time. Eleni, if you would, please.
Sure. Yeah, this is the extension of time request for, it was from a 2009 approval of the aerial shown here. This is a 2020 aerial. You can see that there's been no work done. This is the approved survey. So it was for a swimming pool. This is the swimming pool here. It's kind of triangular shaped, and pool house. They have not gotten a building permit, and they have not done any work on this at this time. The approvals were for everything was more than 100 feet from the wetlands. And they're just looking for an extension right now. We don't see, the planning department considers this to be a reasonable candidate for an extension of time.
And Eleni, I believe they did file the CNRs with the county. Is that correct?
Yes, the CNRs appear to have been filed, but no building permit has been issued, and it appears they haven't done any of the revegetation or anything yet.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, Eleni. Okay, Terry or Ed? Terry, you want to start off here? Terry, you might be muted. Let's see. Are you muted, Terry? I can't hear Terry. Can you all hear Terry?
Talking to Alexa.
What happened to Terry? Did we lose her? Terry, we can't hear you, Terry. I don't see that she's muted though. That's strange.
It's not muted.
Yeah.
Must be having a problem on her end.
Yeah.
Hang on a second.
Now
Let's-
she's muted. Now she'll unmute. Terry, no.
No, she's not.
Let's start with Ed. Ed, why don't you start off, Ed, while Terry tries to come
Yeah,
back. Ed,
I don't have a problem with this, Mr. Chair. I think the recommendations of the planning board give me some comfort that this is a reasonable request. It's a sensitive area, but the way in which they have set the pool, odd configuration further from the road, I think it's a reasonable request. There's nothing wrong with the original plan, so I'm in favor of granting the extension.
okay, thank you. Roy,
I agree.
Tim?
I agree. And perhaps we could just ask Member
Terry.
Berger to give us a thumbs up.
Yeah. Terry, thumbs up, thumbs down? Sideways? She's giving it sideways.
Geez.
She's tough.
Yeah.
Sideways.
We need to give her a blackboard.
Yeah. Terry, this is the last item on the agenda because we're going to table the May 4th meetings until next week. They'll be on the agenda next week. But we can't hear Terry, right?
Terry, do you want to email your comments?
She gave there's a thumbs up. We'll
All right.
take that as a positive. Okay.
And the May 4th minutes, we'll do at the next meeting.
Yep. Okay. Council, anything else on your end?
No, that's everything we have on, just to let people know, June, the schedule has changed a little bit. We have public hearings the next 2 weeks in May. And then we are off the first week of June. And then the 8th and the 15th are both going to be work sessions to get caught up on transcripts that have posted and hearings that have closed. So just so that people are aware of where we are, and the public is aware that we've changed the schedule a little bit. So if you check on, we have changed it on the town website, but if you were thinking we were doing hearings on certain days, double check because that calendar has changed a little bit.
Yep. And then we'll come, thank you, Nancy. And then we come back on the 22nd, public hearings, and June 29th and July 6th, we have no meetings.
Correct.
And a little bit of an early summer break. Okay. Terry, it looks like she's still got audio problems. So, but we will, Roy, if you make a motion, we might have enough votes to second and approve that motion if you want
Sure,
to make.
Mr. Chairman, therefore I make a motion to end the work session of the Town of East Hampton Zoning Board of Appeals for Tuesday, May 11th at 8:34 p.m.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, there you go. You want to second that, Terry?
I'll second that, yeah.
Terry, second. Good. Way
I
to go.
concur.
I concur.
And I concur as well. Thanks, Nancy Lynn, to all the planners and Kyle and LTV. Have a great week. We'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thanks. Good night, guys.
Good night.